getting asked two questions all the time. One is, what is the book about? Which proves to be a surprisingly difficult question to answer. And the other is, where did all this stuff come from? And the answer is that I basically just sort of went up into my mental attic and began pulling out vignettes of things that had stuck with me over the years. So the core of the book, which is set at Bohemia Manor Farm, stems from the fact that I had a house on the Bohemia River for many years, and the Bohemia Manor Farm was right across the river from me. It was always impeccably maintained, and we never ever saw another human being there. And we began wondering, what's going on there? I mean, is there any action? Is this where the mafia meets? So when we couldn't get any information, we just made it up. So that's the setting is because geographically I know it well, and the property always intrigued me. Other pieces just sort of, as I said, I just pulled down from the attic. The bit about the Aboriginal protagonist actually comes from a movie made many years ago called Rabbit Proof Fence that was set in Australia, and it was about a fence that had been built all the way across the breadth of Australia, not to catch rabbits, but basically to stop Aboriginals from moving from one side of the country to the other. The movie left an indelible mark on me, and it was based in the famed Moore River native settlement. So that's why I started it there. And what I found I could do with that character is I could imbue him with lots of interesting characteristics that wouldn't be true if he, had an MBA from Harvard B School or something like that. So that's where that came from. There is an unlikely episode in the book about a whale and about marine life being lured up the length of Chesapeake Bay by an autistic savant who is transmitting acoustic signals underwater. That's all true. Right across from me, and they did a lot of experimentation with various levels of acoustic waves, primarily to see if they could either detect submarines or get them to talk to each other. So I did some reading about that, and it fascinated me. And then in the mid-'80s, there was a true story about a whale that ventured into San Francisco Bay and went 30 miles upstream and was dying up there, and they couldn't figure out how to get the whale out until they tried luring him out with acoustic signals. They dangled a hydrophone off the back of a boat, and lo and behold, the whale followed him right out to sea like a puppy dog. And I just love that story. So I just threw all of these pieces in a blender, and over the course of some years, this is what came out. I was surprised at how challenging it was. It was completely different for me. It was more fun than anything I'd done before. But all of my writing as a lawyer or as a nonfiction author had been didactic, and I was just telling people what to say and what to do or making arguments. And the idea of actually writing anything was meant to evoke anything was foreign to me. So when I sat down to say, well, every lawyer thinks he has a novel in him, right? So I began puttering around, and I found it surprisingly difficult. And what I found difficult, Jim, is I couldn't tell whether it was any good or not. I would write something down and I'd say, well, I have the thrill of authorship. Gee, this reads well to me, but would anybody else find this credible? So your comments when you first signed on were very well received, because I'm still looking for feedback about whether this is a credible piece of literature or whether it's a vanity piece. The thing itself, the plane crash itself comes from JFK Jr., and the fact that he became disoriented in fog and even lost the ability to know whether he was upright. So that's the truth to that fiction. The book originally was wildly overwritten. My first draft was 150,000 words, and I had it edited by the fellow who edits John Jakes. And he was pretty direct, and he said, one word over 100,000 and nobody will breathe on it, so you better leave a lot of it on the cutting room floor. But in the original draft, I had a lot of things that were in the form of letters, that were newspaper clips and articles from the local press. And a lot of that stuff really had to go. But that particular one, the two things, there's that one that's written in the form of a newspaper article. And there was another, this is a spoiler alert, but there's another event later in the book that is very dramatic and is best depicted through the press and through the way it would be written, whether it was by the Inquirer, the New York Times, the New York Post, or the Cecil Whig. So I liked playing around with that stuff, but I had this editor over my shoulder who kept saying, "Keep it simple, stupid," just